My name is Ndichu. I'm the co-founder as well and CEO of Wapi. Nice to see you, Cynthia. Thanks. I want to thank the Central Bank of Kenya and Monetary Authority of Singapore for continuing in that partnership and making this happen. So I think for young people and telling our founder story in innovating a business or starting up a business within the financial services sector, I think one thing that we learned this year is the pandemic. And the pandemic has demonstrated the vulnerability that we as a human being have to a crisis that faces us. And that's a good thing in itself, because if you're able to leverage on technology, it's quickly demonstrated even with this conference and us being able to still hold a conference for the second year running and doing it online. I think that's in a way trying to solve a problem or try and create a solution where a challenge has been presented. I think for founders, if you look around, right around Africa or even just Kenya alone, there are challenges all around us. You will be very surprised how many challenges there are. For all founders, it's just identifying the challenges and finding those solutions to be able to solve them. For example, for Wapi, we were fortunate to spend, myself as well, quite a bit of time in Asia and seeing the success of mobile payments in Asia. We've been fortunate to see the success of mobile payments here in Africa and in Kenya. And we came back and just walked down Luthuli Avenue, which is a street where small traders or individual traders happen to buy goods from Asia and resell them within the market. As you would all know, Africa has a big challenge of unemployment, but also Africa has a great challenge, a great opportunity in the amount of youth and young people who are available to work. And these people are trying to find a means of living, a way of living. And we found that it was practically impossible or extremely difficult for them to send $50, $30, from their little bati shop or iron sheet shop from the streets of Nairobi or the streets of Kenya to send that $30 across into Beijing for plastics or chargers or whatever it is that they're trying to buy to be able to resell for a margin and a living for themselves. So I think it's us seeing that and seeing, okay, there's an opportunity here that can help us reshape the business model that we know as remittance. Because when you look at remittances as defined today, it's money sent back home from the West, which is the US, Canada, Europe. But for us, the business model has slightly changed. It's largely outbound, and it's largely to support young Africans and young Kenyans to be able to make a living for themselves, given they can't find work, and also to be able to connect the two continents a lot closer. So, trying to solve for a problem, I think, is where you start from as a founder. And if you can get into finding out what are the barriers in this challenge and how can you solve them, I think when you dig hard enough, you will find them. Once you find them, you need to be, as I say, resilient. Just like as Ravi Menon said, is the best answer to how we deal with the pandemic we're in today. Resilience is what is important today for us to be able to continue to face the challenge of the pandemic and come out on the other side in the end. So for founders, what I reach out to them is there's challenges. If there's one place across the world where it's easy to identify challenges, I think it's in Africa. I think it's spending time with Africans and consumers and finding out what their challenges are and trying to create and make things a lot easier for them. If you look at how, for instance, our business model is set up in terms of remittances, the jargon and complexity of sending money from, for instance, KES to CNY is completely difficult, and it takes 3 to 5 days, and it's very expensive for that individual. If you're able to instantaneously do that through a simple technology, and that's what we built into the local clearinghouses, and give the customer the right notifications at an efficient price, and it's an instant service for the customer, similar to what they experience here in Africa. We have mobile money, there's instant payments. Why can't we go beyond mere mobile money into a payment beyond and across the border, which is defined as a remittance, but even go a bit further into what you define as a global payment. But then you have to come back and ask, why is that payment being done? Which is very different when you look at the East. The purpose is not for sustenance back home, but the purpose is actually to actually do trade. So this is what we find interesting, and I think you can, in every problem that you find and you look around yourself, wherever you are as a founder, this is the mindset to have.
Thank you very much, Eddie. Again, here, quite insightful points that are coming from the funders, and particularly on the point that you're raising, which I picked, is that, I mean, new entrepreneurs and those who are founding organizations should actually see challenges as opportunities and stepping stone to really change the status quo. And as you've said, youth unemployment in Africa is seen as a major challenge, but you actually open your eyes beyond that box of challenge, and you saw the living conditions of traders in Nairobi. And from that, you could see that the legacy system is actually locking their doors and not allowing them to have the opportunity to open up for remittances. And that's why you came up with a solution and a business model that will address those pain points. Yes, and resilience, as you pointed out, is quite key. Now we're moving to the third question, and I'll go to Cynthia now, to you also. Your business venture, and this is applying to also Wapi together with Kwara. Clearly, it just shows a unique value to the market, and the ingenuity and the innovation is outstanding. That's for sure. We can see the success that is moving across the world and the expansionism that is out there. So it's a very clear, outstanding ingenuity, innovation, resilient business model that you guys have come up with. Do you have a clear path? Did you have a very clear path from the regulatory front? That is, did you get clear assistance, enabling environment from the compliance requirement when you were starting? Was there an environment that nurtured fintech in the country, like in Kenya where we're starting, and then at Kwara and Wapi in Singapore were registered? Is there any certain conducive environment from the regulatory front to facilitate the fintech? And if you can also mention, if the answer is yes to that, probably clarify a little bit, but if the answer is a no, then point out the areas that you think would have worked better and how you were able to navigate. Cynthia, welcome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks so much for that. I would say we are fortunate in Kenya to have a enabling regulatory environment. It's proof, the proof is seen in the number of innovations that have come up the last 15 or so years. And for us specifically, while we operate outside direct regulation in the sense of being a software platform or tech platform, more so than a provider of financial services, it's still important for us to not only keep abreast of what's happening in regulation of the space we operate, but also engage and understand what are the concerns and what are the plans and ambitions as well of the regulator. For us, I would say even as we prepared to expand outside Kenya, one of our first contact points has been with the regulators, both inbound and outbound. We found each other and just tried to understand, okay, how have things developed? What have been the challenges? And is there actually room for a fintech or a tech company to support? That just keeps us informed of any potential risk, which is something investors always want to understand, but also just help us align in the interests of what the country or that particular market is doing. And I would encourage generally most startups or fintechs to keep the regulator in mind, in contact, provide, as we heard recently, and provide recommendations in terms of what is possible or what we would like to see, and rather than seeing it as potentially a barrier to innovation. Where I would suggest for more clarity or some area of improvement is perhaps a single point of consolidated information to find out. Imagine you're you're an entrepreneur, you have an idea. I think it would be helpful to have a sort of point of information, could be just a website that outlines what falls under regulation, what not, how can you get started, and at what point do you actually need to engage the regulator. I've seen that work in different countries, and it just helps demystify regulation. if regulation is perceived as something you have to sort of download a number of complex documents to sort of read through acts, I think that does sometimes either lead to a bit of potential apathy at the beginning, or just a bit of overwhelm. And I think there's an opportunity to sort of demystify regulation, especially at the intersection of tech and financial services, by the different regulators, whether it's the central banks or the cooperative regulator or so on. Just sort of share if information on what it means to participate in that particular sector, what would be regulated or what would require regulation, licensing, what not. If something requires regulation, what would it take for you to be qualified? I think that would help, and that would spur more innovation. Maybe people actually do have ideas around new versions of wallets or new versions of money transfer, remittance businesses, and so on. Just making that information much more consumable, I think would actually help.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. I mean, this is quite impactful in your statement that you've just concluded with, in terms of the intersection between fintech and regulators. It's information, and information sharing is key. And I think the regulators are hearing this and enable us to ensure that this single point of consolidated information should really help to demystify regulation. And I thank you for the fact that you also pointed to startups that they shouldn't really shy away from understanding regulators and thinking about regulators and regulations. But as you said, the demystification will really help them to better understand the need to ensure that regulation comes at the upfront. Eddie and Mwaura, over to you. Can you also share your experience in this front? Thank you.
No, thank you, Kennedy, and thank you, Cynthia. I think mine is to echo really right back, because we're right in the same journey or we've had the same journey as Cynthia. I think she nailed it right on the head. We had the fortunate of hindsight, given our banking experience, but even having that, I think it's not a direct answer, yes or no, but I do agree with Cynthia that for instance, the central bank here in Kenya does offer a very allowing environment for you to be able to create something new. And until you have it figured out and exactly what you're trying to do, then you approach them. But once you approach them, I think it's important to understand which door to open and which regulation you should be under. And I think that is not easy to understand if you've not been in the banking industry or in the financial services industry. And so there is need for one point of contact. There is need for one area for an entrepreneur who has a great idea to be able to go to and understand where should I be regulated. But having said that, the mandate of the regulator is largely to govern central banks and to govern that they're operating within regulation and within the acts and within the law. I think it's important for entrepreneurs to know not just that you have to adhere to this law. I think it's important to understand why it is this law exists and why you need to operate this idea within this law. For us, especially, we got to learn a lot of things, even working with the Monetary Authority of Singapore, having set up in Singapore as well. Why it is that they require such aspects of oversight in the business that we're doing, and they were able to create categories for us to be able to operate. So it is very important for entrepreneurs or any founder, anyone with a great idea on, for instance, how to save. Why is it important to keep customer deposits safe? If you want to move money, why is it important for you to keep segregated accounts? And all this is provided in our act. And I think the entrepreneurs need to also, and as much as the central bank, to use Cynthia's word, apathy, a lot of the entrepreneurs need to do a bit of research, because majority of the regulation is actually available online. You do need to do a bit of homework and a bit of reading to understand and what law says what and what you can operate within. But then my final point is, there are these financial institutions that are regulated by the central bank. And I think what could be done is the use of these regulated entities to create that level of understanding of regulation. And I think some form of incentive for these institutions to be able to support entrepreneurs need to be provided for, accounted for. Sort of ease up the pressure on the central bank, but also allow the enabling ability of entrepreneurs across different aspects of different financial products to be able to create opportunities for ideas to be created, for new products to be developed, and for oversight, most importantly, to be available in this ideation process.
Thank you very much, Mwaura, for the insights. Indeed, you're adding additional points in terms of also echoing, but also I like the final point you also raised in terms of the regulated entities that are also taking partnership with new startups can also help the compliance journey. But you also pointed something which is very important for the startups to understand why regulations are there in the first place. Echoing Cynthia's words, it's risks. And as you say, the objects of the laws are very clear. But once you appreciate why the regulator is coming up with the oversight regimes of such nature, then it becomes easy to comply. And it also helps you to really take the effort. So we take point of the insights that the founders you've raised, and we go to another question. I'm not yet seeing questions in the chat, so but please, you're welcome at this point. If there are any questions, raise them up, and we will direct them directly to any of our founders here. So so far, I'm not seeing a question. So I'll ask the question then. So how have you, Cynthia, how are you managing competition, both domestic and internationally? And you also want to expand beyond the expansions in Africa to Latin America and Asia. Or have you carved your own blue ocean, as they say? So you're not really in a red ocean. Would you just want to share some of that journey too, Cynthia? Sure
thing. And first, I'd like to just absolutely sort of echo and agree with what Eddie said about the obligation of fintechs to seek out what regulation says. I think it would be irresponsible otherwise to say that you can operate or innovate in a vacuum, and so that's 100% agreed with. Back to your question. So first, I of course very much admire blue ocean strategies. I think when you can identify them, they really can make the whole difference. For us, I would say it's a bit more of a mix. We are replacing custom-built systems or digitizing manual processes, and in that sense, we're not the first to do it. But we did identify an opportunity to do things faster, better, specifically by keeping the user's needs first, and also by thinking global or scalable from day one. So that means for us that there is still competition, both globally and locally. But what we've seen keeps winning out over and over is our experience. So first of all, a sort of sleek, well-built product that provides immediate value. We've seen some of our clients say, it used to take 7 hours to run our end-of-day process. Now it's 15 minutes. Or we used to take a week to register members. Now we can do that in 20 minutes, including the KYC and all this type of verification. So if we're able to provide value immediately, and if we're able to show the customer and the user that we're willing to actually walk a journey with you, that has set us quite apart from how things were done before. And that could be an advantage we have just by launching now versus having launched 10, 15 years ago, where we have the benefit of modern certain technologies, cloud computing, much more widespread internet, better distribution of wallets so people can actually transact from anywhere. Being able to sort of harness those changes now and deliver them faster and better to customers has made the difference. But it also tells us something, which is that the incumbent can always be disrupted. So it's on us to make sure that not only as we grow, that we don't become or remain the incumbent, you leave room for constant innovation, sort of keep that startup mindset all the way. I think there are some great examples of companies that have been able to do that, where despite success and despite growth, they still sort of feel like they approach their markets like a startup. And we hope to sort of keep that mindset and sort of never really get too comfortable, because it doesn't take too much to actually be disrupted if you don't keep abreast of what's going on with your customers.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. I mean, if I could summarize the great insights that you've said, is listening and hearing consumer concern and constant innovation, consumer-centric, and don't be complacent. Just continue the startup spirit. That's so great. Thank you so much, Cynthia. And Eddie, Mwaura, please, over to you on the same point of competition.
Mwaura, I'll take that one. So yeah, it's interesting for us, to be honest, because as I mentioned earlier, we see the volume of funds for trade moving from Africa to Asia to the tune of $300 billion. Now, it's a huge pie, so it's not a winner take it all. We haven't gotten that to our business model. I think every other company is trying to nibble at that volume. I think what has really worked for us is working with licensed institutions such as banks and payment companies and partners out of Asia, all across Southeast Asia. That's been very interesting to watch how we've modeled those partnerships and how we're using these partnerships to acquire new customers. I think for us, it's a daily, almost monthly marathon in terms of really understanding what our customers need and also spending time with them. I think, Cynthia mentioned, just being able to understand the segments that you're serving is absolutely crucial. Interesting enough, for us, when we started the business, we thought a larger amount of our customers were going to be actually Africans, but we're seeing an interesting split where we've even got Chinese companies who are customers, we've got European companies who are customers. I think from an expansion point of view, is us having set up offices out of Singapore is now next to Hong Kong, and then do it again in China. But how do we build an ecosystem of how we continuously spend time and understand what our customers are asking of us, but also at the same time, invest in our technology. I think it's interesting that we have our platform as a Kenyan fintech built out of China with our teams, our development teams in Beijing. How do we iterate on the experiences they have on building significantly successful technology, but also working with local developers and interns in trying to transfer this skill set that is quite unique out of Asia. But yeah, I think for us it's a daily grind. It's a month-to-month grind. I think it's exciting. Don't lose focus. Even though you might not have your blue ocean strategy from day one, I think it's making sure that you're always continuing to keep the ball moving, get the next project out, get the next customer in, give a better service, and yes, spend a lot of time with your teams as well.
Thank you very much, Mwaura. And we are almost going towards the end of our 40 minutes. But I like the way you pointed it out in terms of cross-pollination of innovative ideas from different markets, and also sharing these insights again to the local market, which again goes back to what you said, you've echoed Cynthia's point in terms of ensuring that when you build the ecosystem and investing in that technology, it actually addresses customers' needs and working with the local partners. That's for developers. That's great. I will have, again, there are no questions from the audience, so I'll take the liberty again to ask one last question, and because it's on the 40 minutes hour. So the last question will be, maybe I can ask two questions and then we end. I'll ask one other question that comes also from our studio. And this relates to consumer trust and loyalty, which is a key component of your success. It could be part of education, digital literacy. In different markets, I think consumer issues may be key from your experience, and you probably want to share some sets around there. How do you really address, starting with Cynthia, I recall at some point you had mentioned that security and building trust and resilience of your product for consumers is key. Do you have any elements that you want to share on how you build consumer trust and loyalty on your products. Thank you.
Thank you, Kennedy, for that. So for us, first of all, it's extremely important in the financial services. At the end, we're dealing with people's incomes, their savings, their retirement plans, their debt obligations. So these are extremely personal and extremely important topics when you think about as an individual, even when you reflect on yourself. It has to be first when you're offering a solution. So how we've addressed it, the first is with tech. First, we've employed as much as we could military grade security. And it's up to us to win the trust of the customers, and we do it with data and transparency. So, for example, our platform is over 99.9% available, but we don't want you to just take our word for it. We just submit the status of our product to a third party, and that third party is just constantly pinging our APIs and our backends and reporting the availability. The same with certifications. We don't just want to tell you your data is secure. We want to show you that we've submitted ourselves to audit, and these third parties have audited us accordingly. And I think that has helped quite a bit. The second way, other than just using tech, is with education and openness, open-mindedness. I think you can't tire from explaining and addressing these topics. I think we answer the question about security so often, and maybe 3 times in every conversation with a customer, but that's our job. It's for us to build that trust and then as well show a track record of the same. With regards to digital literacy, this is really important because what we're looking at is a sort of imminent shift in which skills are relevant in at least in our market, but I would say that's happening in a lot of markets. So that's where you look at, like in our sector, the traditional approach of maybe servers, physical networking, and so on is no longer as compelling, either from a cost basis or a security basis. And we don't want that our solution creates a generation of unemployed IT professionals, for example, who are historically skilled in traditional ways of keeping information and data. We want to ensure that we bring everyone along, so that if that means upskilling and reskilling people who we work with, so that topics like data security, document management, employee security, password PIN protection, access controls become the new certification, then we want to make sure that we are a part of that. So those two actually help us build loyalty.
Oh, great. Thank you. I wouldn't want to reiterate. The points are so great, Cynthia. I would just say this journey that you're taking, you're not leaving anyone behind. Eddie and Mwaura, quick one on that, and then we'll finalize with the last question for your insight to the young entrepreneurs. Eddie, Mwaura, who wants to pick this on consumer issues?
I'll grab it. So one of the things we offer is, an individual and African. So we operate out of, our customers are in Kenya, Ghana, Nigeria, Ethiopia, and Zambia. And one of the things, these are customers who probably never met, come to our office or ever met us, but basically they're trusting their funds to be able to go to a recipient sitting on the other side of the country, or the other way around, they're trusting to receive funds from somebody sitting on the other side of the country. There's a significant factor of trust there, and that comes, unstated with any financial service that you would offer a consumer. I think one of the benefits we offer consumers is two that are currently not available. One is the ability to instantly deliver that payment for that consumer, meaning that the person there who's expecting the funds gets to receive them immediately. And secondly, we try and remove the jargon and complexity in doing that transaction, given that there's two different currencies that are transacting. Usually, in most cases, the customer, would trust their bank or would trust their financial institution to be able to process that transaction. What we've done is build a proprietary process in delivering or removing that jargon and complexity, which we call the ordering process, with staged notification to the customer on where the transaction is at. We do instant reversals for the customer in case, for one reason or the other, the transaction fails. And I think such efficient capabilities on our technology allows the customer to trust us and go beyond trusting us and being loyal. I came here, I did this transaction, it was smooth, it was effective, it went, and I was happy. I came here, I did this transaction, it failed, but somebody was able to get back to me. So I was able to get notified instantaneously on the status of the transaction, and so was my recipient. So I think part of our principle is having embedded TCF principles on our technology, which is treating customers fairly and being able to avail support and notifications just to ease or remove the jargon and complexity. And I think that has given us significant customer loyalty. I think with payments it works a bit different. Once you have used a reliable service at least 3 to 5 times, the 6th time, if things don't go well, you still remain reliable, and that's how we've been able to capture customer loyalty.
Thank you very much, Eddie. That's great. So remove the jargon and complexity and make it user-friendly and easy for consumers to use. Finally, to Cynthia and also to Eddie Mwaura, I'll just ask you to say one key advice point. You've said a lot of advices, insight, but I just want to give you opportunity to just say a last point that is key to inspire young fintech startups. What would you just advise them? One point to consider, one sentence, in other words. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Kennedy. If I have to pick one thing, I'd just say start with the user. Sit and watch them, see where the shoe pinches, then and only then start building anything.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. And Mwaura?
Okay, Kennedy, I'll jump in.
Thank you, Eddie.
I'll make my comments as Paul tries to get back on. I think for if somebody has found a way, and you need to open your eyes and look keenly and where your opportunities are to solve problems. One is to be persistent, extremely persistent. Regardless, you don't have to be the subject matter expert in what you're solving, but if you see a problem, you try and fix it. I think persistence is important. Secondly, is consistency. You need to be very consistent, even when you go through challenges. And finally, as Ravi Menon says, resilience. So those are the PCRs, what I call for all founders trying to get into the journey of innovation.
Thank you very much. So I think I'll conclude this session. Mwaura, Eddie, are you there to speak now? Because we want to hand over the session back to the studio. Yeah, we can hear you now. We wanted you to just say one sentence in terms of your final advice to fintech entrepreneurs. Not final because you're still interacting with them, but just for this session. Yeah.
I think, to be honest, I can't repeat more what Eddie said and Cynthia said, but don't wait for tomorrow. Just get started.
Great. On procrastinate. So thank you very much, Cynthia. Thank you, Mwaura. Thank you, Eddie. You've been so insightful. You've not been stingy in sharing your experiences. We really value your contribution, and we wish you a greater success. And we want you to be fintech giants in the near future. So thank you so much for the proud environment that you're working in, and you're making us proud as a continent. We really appreciate you. Back to the organizer. We are done with this session, and I really thank you so much. Appreciate it.